Instructions. On the screen, you will see 10 blue words. Each of these blue words has a corresponding red number to its left. That is the assigned number. Place that number in the box that is in front of the appropriate definition for that word. You will have approximately 2 minutes. This is one of my favorite list of 10 words in the whole group that we're going to do. They're very valuable. They're good learning tools here. Our first word is anomalous. The base word is anomaly. This is an adjective form. A lot of adjectives just add the OUS to it. If it is an item that is an anomaly, it is anomalous. It comes from the Latin away from, ab. We've gone over that before, which meant not or away from. And the Latin word homolous. Homolous, which we get as even or the same. In Latin, homo was equivalent to the even or the same. You can take it back to the Greek homo, which we get in a lot of words. If you see something that's a homophone, homogenized and so forth, it has something to do with being the same thing. If you put all of this together, you will get anomalous as away from the same. And that sort of makes sense because that's what anomalous means. It's not the same thing. It's something that deviates from what you would expect. And that's why it should be paired up with the seventh definition down on the list. The seventh definition is deviating from or inconsistent with the common order. Anything that sort of surprises you because it just doesn't seem to fit might be considered anomalous. You might hear it in statistics. It's a statistical anomaly. You might hear it in talking about many exceptions that occur in life. Sometimes the word might be used just as a synonym for something that's odd or peculiar, but it really should be used for something that's outside what's normally expected. That's why it should be paired with the seventh item down on the list, deviating from or inconsistent with the common order. Our second word is discriminating. A lot of students think this discriminating is always a bad word. Any sort of discrimination based on race, religion, or creed is usually considered bad. But the word discriminate really means that you're making careful judgments about certain items. The way we use discrimination in the sense of the negative word has only become common in the last couple of 100 years. Let's look at some of the positive uses. For example, if you are a discriminating eater, you're very careful about what you're eating. If you're a discriminating dresser, you're very careful about how you clothe yourself. So thus, very often, being discriminating is a very good thing, not a negative thing. We've only used it in the negative sense lately, and it's still in formal English. If you're discriminating, you're very, very, very careful in your judgments. A related word, indiscriminate, would be a negative word. You do not discern, you do not judge carefully, you just make sometimes random choices. Is considered very negative. It should be paired up with the sixth item on the list, having excellent taste or judgment. That's a little bit of a leap, but sometimes if you are a discriminating person, you do have good taste because you're very careful. So that was a little tricky, wasn't it? Our third word is voluminous. This almost appears to be a complicated word, but it's not. If you look at the beginning of the word, you'll see something that looks very close to the word volume. Volume is how large something is. So voluminous is really another word for the sufficiency to fill a volume. Therefore, it's a lot of times just means a great volume, a great size, a great extent. You can have a voluminous amount of food, or a voluminous number of mistakes, or a voluminous amount of lava from a volcano. So it's just a synonym for a lot of. The words volume and voluminous come down almost unchanged from the Latin, and they've always have meant just a lot of something, a large volume of something, a large amount of something. Therefore, it should be paired up with the bottom definition, large or ample. Our next word is ethereal. This word has a variety of different meanings. It can be light, very airy, very fluffy, such as an ethereal world created through your imagination, your dreams. It can have the sense of being very delicate. You have a lace piece of cloth that's very ethereal, it's very fluffy, very delicate. It sometimes can refer to the heavens or celestial bodies. It can be up in space. So those are all different meanings of that. They're very related, especially if you look at the word origin. The Romans, in their Latin language, used the word ether, and there's a related Greek word. You see that a lot, the Latin and Greek sort of intermixing, but they use that to indicate any sort of pure, bright air, something that shined very, very bright. Later on in our more recent history, scientists created a gas called ether, and ether was used as an anesthetic for a while. But this idea of it being pure and light and ether, which just sort of knocked you out as an anesthetic, sort of made things dreamy, very fluffy, very hard to touch, very much like air. And that's how we get the word ether, or in this case, the word ethereal. Very closely related. They come from the same origin. Therefore, the fourth word on our list, ethereal, should be paired up with the fifth one down, heavenly, exceptionally delicate or refined. It can mean either thing. Keep that in mind. It has two very distinct definitions with a common origin. Our fifth word is cogent. A really useful word, especially the cog part. Anything with cog in it generally means to know something, and you find it in quite a few different words. You might see it in cognitive therapy, or cognizant, I'm aware of something, or to recognize somebody, I know who they are. So you see it in a lot of words. It comes from the Latin cognoscere, which strangely, or not strangely I suppose, meant to know. It's an extremely important root to remember, so don't forget that root. One of the most famous uses of the word cog came from Descartes, who was a scientist, and he was sort of explaining reality, philosophy, and he used the Latin phrase cognito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. The word cognito actually meant I think in Latin. Ergo sum, therefore I am. So very, very important root. So which word does this best pair up with on the test? Well, if you look at Cogent, there's nothing about knowing, but if you look at the third one down, it means to the point, relevant, or pertinent. If it's cogent, it's knowable, and that's exactly another way of looking at the meaning. It's knowable. It's to the point. It's relevant. I understand it. It's pertinent. So it should be paired up with that one. Our next word is lugubrious. This word generally means mournful, sad, a little bit gloomy. It's not like you're suicidally depressed or anything, but it's very, very, very sad and very, very mournful. It comes from the Latin word lugubre, which meant, not strangely enough, sad, mournful. I'm always amazed how certain words sort of fit their meanings. To me, lugubrious sounds sad. It sounds heavy-hearted. It sounds very mournful. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of history to words having a very, very strong effect to the emotions they effect. That sort of philosophy can really help you on standardized testing. If you're studying this list of words to improve your vocabulary results on standardized tests, again, words have effect on you. Certain words are happy sounding words and certain words are sad words. Things that go are usually sad, and things that go are usually happy. Is this always the case? Not always, but for example, let's look at words that start with bl, blah. Blah sounds negative, and it produces a lot of negative sounding words. Blab, black, blackball, blah, blame, blame, bland, blank, blaspheme, blast, bladder, blah, blazon, bleak, bleed, blemish, blind, blob, blood, blow, bluff, blunt, blur, and so forth. Now, does it mean that all words that begin with BL are negative? No, there's quite a few that are positive or neutral, but for the most part, the majority of the words are negative. There is a rationale to sound and effect in English. Nothing will substitute the hard work that's required in order to understand and increase your vocabulary, but certainly the sound gives you a mnemonic tool to help remember certain things. Try to associate words such as lugubrious with glum, gloom, glut, glutton, and I'll guarantee you that you'll be able to remember the word lugubrious a little bit better than just memorizing the meaning. So that should be paired up with the fourth definition down: mournful, dismal, gloomy. And if you did that, you're doing well. These are all learning episodes. Our next word is copious. Copious is not a real hard word. It just means something that's large in quantity. You have a lot of things. You have a copious amount. You have an abundant amount. It's derived from the Latin copi, which meant wealth. Obviously, if you were wealthy, you had a lot of money. So you should see it as synonymous to abundant, extensive quantity, full of, profuse. All of those are good synonyms. The word copious should be paired up with the top definition, abundant or plentiful. It's an easy word to know and you should remember it. After all, you do want a copious number of words in your vocabulary, don't you? Our next word is pertinacious. Normally when you hear this word, it generally has something to do with being stubborn. You just don't want to change your mind. You hold your course of action, you hold your opinion, and you're persistent. You just never give up. The word pertinacious comes from Latin sources, no surprise there. The first part's per, which meant through, cut through something. And the second part was the ten part. Ten is a very important root in Latin, tenere, to hold. And you can see if you just keep cutting until you hold on to something, you're going to be pertinacious. So 10 is a very important root. You have it in quite a few different words. Look for either T-E-N or T-I-N. They're both from the same root. Think about the words tenacious, or the words continent, or detention, or tenor. They all have something to do with holding on to something, not changing. If you remember that, pertinacious becomes an easier word to remember, and it should be paired up obviously with the second one down on the list, stubbornly persistent, holding on a belief or a position, pertinacious. Our penultimate, or next to the last word, is precocious. When most people use the word precocious, they mean that somebody is unusually advanced in maturity. You might be precocious at playing the piano. You'll hear, oh, he's only 6 years old and he plays the piano like a professional. He's very precocious. So it generally refers to somebody who's very young that does something very, very well. It's a precocious child. You'll hear that together all the time, those words, precocious child. Word comes from a Latin root meant to ripen, and that sort of makes sense. You ripen, you become wiser, older. Our last word on our list is lauded. Lauded means to praise something. The root L-A-U-D is very, very important to remember. In Latin, laudere actually meant to praise. Root laud shows up in all sorts of things. You might actually hear it when you graduate. It'd be nice. Summa cum laude is the Latin word for with great praise. You see it there directly from the Latin. You also see the laud in words such as applaud. If you're giving people praise, you do this thing society does, which is clap their hands together, and that's to praise the person who is speaking or singing or whatever they do. That's praise, isn't it? At times, even English makes sense. I hope you enjoyed those. I did.